So let's go down and get another slave then, Rox replied as they walked, stopped, and checked his screen. But first books, right? He looked at Adam. Yes, books first, and why buy a slave? I bought your sister to help you so you would help me. I'm actually against slavery. It's illegal where I'm from for a damn good reason. That's why I wrote the contract as I did. They are as free as I could make them. He ignored the screen and looked at Rox, who looked very confused now. Slavery illegal? What do you do with criminals, captured enemy combatants, and people who can't pay their debts? He had forgotten all about the books and engineers they needed. We put them in prison. You don't have prisons? And there are other ways. Besides, we normally hire people who want to be hired. Adam looked at him as if Rox made no sense, and Rox laughed. Wow, you earthlings. Okay, we can hire somebody straight from school, but we might have to wait a while. We can talk about human ways later. Man, prison for every criminal? That's barbaric. Remind me never to go to a human world. He turned back to the screen and found the shop. Adam wondered if something had been lost in translation. The prison wasn't that bad. It couldn't be worse than slavery. He followed Rox to the shop, and as they were about to enter, Rox stopped him. I'll do the talking, okay? Next time we return, you can buy the books. I don't want another situation like with Soshu. You okay with that? He was quite serious, but when Adam nodded in agreement, he smirked and went inside. Adam turned his attention to his pad and asked to talk to Vorts. Yes, sir. What can I help you with? Vort sounded a little worried and looked at the screen. I just wanted you to review the delivered goods and let me know if we need anything. I will grant you access to the library computer. There are some files there. Besides the fertile earth, the first goal is to gain a functional atmosphere, so anything that can help there would be good. Yes, sir. I don't think your droid will allow me to look at those files into your quarters. He looked off screen again to the same point, and it clicked for Adam. DO1, they are allowed into the general quarters and access to open files. You do not need to follow them around, Adam said with a slight smirk. He forgot droids take everything literally. He heard an affirmative on the screen and the sound of metal boots leaving. Vort seemed to calm down. Thank you, sir. I will get right to it. What should I do if I notice something we need? Make a list and send it to me. The ship should have 163 cubic meters left. He checked the ship's status on the pad, and I want it filled up before we leave. Do you want me to fill the cargo hold with organics? I don't think we should mix the organic trash with your goods. And you have 13 cubic meters left in the cargo hold 1. Do you want to fill that up with organics? That will leave cargo hold 2, 3, and 4 free for other goods, or you can fill more of them up. Fill up cargo hold 1 and let me know how much is left after the goods are delivered. Can you also check out the files on Project Dirt? We're going to be busy here. We have to find and hire an engineer as well. Engineer? There was one in the pen. He was a Bugino with a baby boy, Vorts replied. I doubt people would buy him, so he will probably still be there. Why, because of the baby boy? Adam felt his stomach knotted at the description. A baby was held as a slave. The Buginos are mostly peaceful and loyal, very loyal to their family. Somebody killed the mother, so he went on a rampage and killed the fools with his bare hands. He will probably kill anybody who tries to separate him from his child, and nobody wants a baby that needs extra care. They are probably trying to find ways to separate them. He could hear Vort starting up the library computer as he spoke. Pretty sad, too. The baby is quite cute, Hera commented from the side, and Adam smirked. He had an idea, probably a bad idea, but this might work. What's his name? Jork Wirt. He's a level 5 engineer, so he's expensive, but you have to take his baby, too. Hera had taken over the speaking now. She seemed a little eager now. Well, babies need medical supervision. I'm just glad I already got a nurse. Make a list of what we need for that as well. I got to go now. I see Rox coming. He hung up as he came over to him. So what now? Oh, you owe me 850 bits? He handed him a small bag filled with memory crystals, and Adam smirked as he accepted them. You know you're right. Let's just do it easily and get an engineer from the slave pen. But first, we need to drop by the lawyer again. I need a new contract. He started to walk, but Rox looked confused at him. "I thought you didn't like slaves." "I have nothing against slaves. I have something against slavery. I spoke with your sister, and she told me of somebody who needs our help and might be able to help us as well." Adam walked faster. Starting to feel a need to fix this, they quickly got to the law office and were greeted by the avian-looking secretary. "Back already. Mr. Harry Roro will be quite pleased. I will let him know you are here." She almost sang the words, and they sat down. Rox looked quite uncomfortable where he was sitting. Adam felt more relaxed here. The room was light with an artificial air freshener that smelled of fruit. An android came over with refreshments, and after a minute, the door to the lawyer gilded open and they were invited in. Adam smiled at the lawyer, gave him a small nod, and then stopped a little confused. Next to him sat a lady he had seen earlier. Rox showed his teeth for a second before realizing where he was and controlling himself. Next to Mr. Harry Roro sat the Heron lady they had seen earlier the day. She glared at Rox but did not say anything. Adam looked between them and back at Mr. Harry Roro. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were with a client. I feel embarrassed now. We can leave and return later." The old avian man laughed. No. This is Mrs. Minna, my colleague and partner. Of course, if your friend is uncomfortable, I can ask her to leave." Adam looked at Rox, who controlled himself. "Of course not. I'm sorry for my outburst. I was just surprised. I should have expected a Haran in the law business." Rox replied, a little ashamed, and Mrs. Minna slowly nodded quite felinely. "Apologize accepted," she replied as she ignored him and turned her attention back to Adam. "I was impressed by the raw contract you set up. You must have some law practice?" "Thank you, and you are correct. I need another contract for a slave with a child. I want the child to be registered as a free person if possible. Only the father should be in my service for the minimum needed time. The rest should be like we discussed earlier. This person will take on the position of engineer in my company." They all seemed to study him as he spoke, but he ignored it and focused on what he was setting up as he took out his pad, loaded up the contract, and handed it over. Mrs. Minna took the pad as she studied him, then she turned to Rox. "Is he real?" Mr. Harry Roro laughs delightfully as he gets up, walks over to a screen and activates it, going through the search history and finding the slave market, and turns to Adam. "You have a name for this engineer?" Rox nods to her and then shakes his head while muttering, "Humans, children of chaos, and apparently peacemakers." "York Wirt, I was told he was a level 5 engineer. It's the same firm as the last one." He walked over to the screen, and there, the man came up. "Is that a Buginos?" The man in the picture was about 2 meters tall, a muscular man with yellow skin and gray dots going down his arms. He had 4 blue eyes and large floppy ears and was almost entirely bald with 2 green knotted braids hanging down his back. In his arm was a small version of him. It was a small bundle that nearly fitted completely in his arms. The man was an engineer, as he had been told. He had a sentence of 150 years for killing 15 members of a street gang as vengeance, and he had been given 20 years extra for taking the law into his own hands. Harry Roro looked at the intel and back to Adam. "You can never release him, but you can free the child immediately." Adam nodded. "That's his only crime as well. I think he will appreciate a second chance." Mrs. Minna got up and handed him the contract. "Let me know if you need a wife. I can get one cheap." Adam looked at her as his jaw dropped. "Wife? For whom? I'm not going to force somebody to marry him." Rox laughed at his reaction. "For you, she is asking if you want a wife." "Me?" Adam got blustered. "No, I don't need one. But thank you for the offer. I think we will be going now. I will transfer the money now." He hurried out the door, then stopped, bowed, and said his goodbye before getting out of there as he paid for their services. Mrs. Minna looked confused after him as Rox laughingly followed after Adam. "You impressed her. I've never seen a Haran offering up one of their own before. You were smart to say no. She was probably looking forward to eating you." Rox could hardly contain his laughter as they headed to the slave market. Adam just tried to forget the whole incident. and after 30 minutes he stood outside the market with his now third slave. He felt sick to his stomach at the thought and didn't notice the look from York. Adam felt like a creep as he walked towards the ship. He could hear Rox and York speaking behind him, and he shut it out. This was not what he wanted to use his money on. If he could buy his freedom and set him free, he would accept it, but now he was burdened with being a slave owner for the rest of York's life, maybe even his own. He could not even kill himself. If he died, York would automatically become a slave to the government again. His plan had backfired, and he didn't like it. They got to the ships, and he walked inside, telling D01 who the new crewmates were and their roles. Then he said he needed to retire for the night. He apologized to Rox and the other. He avoided looking at York as he could not look him in his eyes. He simply turned and went to his room. Adam woke up from that nightmare he had not had for a few years. He hit the wall and screamed in frustration. This was not going to be fun. This place would remind him of that nightmare. He sat up, went to shower, and then dressed. He looked at the cabin door and took a deep breath. He needed to talk to York and make him understand. When he left his room, he heard laughter and singing. He smelled food also. He slowly walked to the sound, expecting it to stop as he stepped inside, and it did. "I hope my singing didn't disturb you, master," York said with a smile as he held a frying pan with what looked like a purple pancake being cocked. "Don't call me master. I'm not your master. I simply gave you a second chance. You're not a slave in my eyes. Understand that. I'm not your master." "If you say so, but you did save me and my son. Little Miker will have a chance to grow up because of you, so you might see yourself as my master, but you are my master, and his second father." York's voice was still filled with joy and defiance at not being allowed to call him master. Adam looked at him and the little bundle in Hera's arms. She looked at him, then back at the bay, and smiled. Fort smirked as he chewed on one of the purple pancakes. "Second father?" Adam looked surprised and sat down, rubbing his temple. "I can't deal with this now. Did you make the list of what we need?" He turned to Vorts, who nodded and handed him the pad. "I looked at the planetary scans. The dumping of organic is not going to work. The atmosphere is too thin, and the heat evaporates too quickly. The night temperatures reach -40 degrees while the day temperatures can reach boiling points. You need to focus on the atmosphere first, so you need to melt at least 30% of both poles. That will give you water vapors, but there are other gases you need as well. You should dump the organics in one of those domes in your building. That way you can make some dirt, and once you fix the atmosphere, you can return to your waste project." Vort seemed to understand that Adam needed to focus on something other than the current situation, and he explained as simply as he could what needed to be done. Adam looked at the list. "What's a sun generator, and why do we need 5 of them?" "They are ice melters. Miners use them to melt away the ice to access minerals in asteroids. You need 2 for each pole. The last is spare parts." Yorks replied, as he put a plate in front of him. "They are effective, but there is always a chance they break down." Adam looked at him, and the plate grabbed a pancake. He chewed on it as he looked over the list. 3 speeders? No, just buy the print design. I have factory printers. He changed it on the list. Same here, and this and this. He changed 3 more items, then accessed his account and opened a company account. He put in 50,000 credits and handed it to Vorts. "You and Rox can get this. Once York has fixed Rock's ships, we will fill up the cargo hold and leave. I need to study the books he got me." He grabbed the plate and got up. "Good pancakes, by the way." "What are pancakes?" Adam didn't leave his room before the evening. He only found Hera and the baby on the ship. The others were shopping and talking about getting satellites and probes. He checked his wrist and saw a few messages, mostly lists of things they needed. He had absent-mindedly accepted those throughout the day as he had been absorbing more about the different cultures. He had searched for a civilization in this galaxy sector that didn't have slavery and found none. The 4 Fushan and Haran wars had been epic. To him, it seemed more like cats and dogs fighting. The 2 cultures had several peaceful colonizers as well. They had the largest amount of cross-species marriages as well. What he was left with was to use common sense and remember that most people here don't understand humor or human culture. Hara looked up from a pad as he entered the main room. "Are you hungry, Mass? What should I call you, by the way? I mean, if you don't like Master," she asked, and he replied quickly. "Adam, I'm just Adam. If you want to be formal, it's Mr. Wrangler, but nobody outside a business meeting would call me that." He smiled to her as he went to make himself some food. When she moved to help, he had to stop her. "I do know how to make food. I'm not a child." He tried to say it as friendly and non-treating as possible. She stepped back, a little confused. "I read that Tufons feels comfortable serving others, and I know why you are here and not free to wander the galaxy, but you don't have to serve me dinner. I'm not a child." He explained as he continued making himself some food. He saw there were some blue pancakes left and grabbed one. She looked at him as she slowly sat down. She had been up the moment she had asked him, like an eager puppy. "I never got to thank you properly," she said, looking at him, and he chuckled. "There's no need to thank me. I'll be at the bridge. Where is York?" he replied as he was getting ready to leave. "He is installing the drone drive in my brother's ship. My brother said you wanted to do that." She replied, slightly confused, and wondered Adam if he had missed something. "Oh, thank you. Let me know when they are finished and send Vorts up to the bridge when he returns," he replied as he went up and sat down in the pilot chair. He turned on the screen while drinking a cup of what he hoped was coffee. He put the plate with blue pancakes and chicken legs on the small table next to the chair. "Computer, run checkup on all systems and check all reports. No audio, screen only." He stretched slowly so as not to spill the cup as he had given the instructions. He suddenly had an urge for chocolate, but remembered eating the last stash weeks ago. Good. He needed to find a way to order some from Earth, or find out how to make some here. He drank the coffee while he went over the reports. He barely heard Vorts come into the bridge and stop next to him. "You asked for me, sir?" he said while putting his hand behind his back. Adam glanced at him and nodded. "Yeah, I know you're not a terraformer, but you should know more about this than me. What do you think about the plan?" he asked as he leaned on the arm of his chair. "And please speak honestly." "Honestly, are you sure?" he replied, clearly uncomfortable. "Yes, if you can see a flaw, then I would like to know before we try. I don't want to waste unnecessary credits here. I'm not made out of money." Adam smiled as he replied, trying to calm him down. "To be honest, it won't work, sir. There is a reason why nobody cares about full terraforming. It's a waste of resources, and there are so many planets around where you only need to change the atmosphere by introducing some invasive oxygen algae and wait 100 years. You plan to make it into a breathable planet within 10 years. You are aware that the atmosphere is too thin, right? There is not enough nitrogen. Only traces of oxygen and argon exist. The carbon level is way too high. The pressure is too low, so your little atmosphere is slowly leaking out. The lack of a proper atmosphere destroys your other project of making organic waste into dirt. The current atmosphere can't hold the heat during the night, so it's like the days are summer and nights are winter. Hold the waste until the domes are built and dump it there. Then buy fertilizer and spread over them, and within a year you will have a field there." Vorts spoke carefully, but when he noticed Adam didn't get upset but merely listened, he seemed to be more relaxed. "Okay, so we melt the poles. Water vapor should help release more gases." Adam replied, "Look, I know this is unusual, but just because people don't do it doesn't mean it can't be done. You should record everything. Maybe get a research droid to keep a record. If it works, I'm sure many would be interested in how it was done." Vorts replied, and Adam nodded. "And how much would that cost?" Adam asked as he checked his spending that day. He had 71,000 credits. He needed to go over the receipts when they took off. "Those are cheap, and 500 bits will get you top of the line with the above security. Most students buy used ones and tinker with them to adjust their research results. A new one will ensure you have not tinkered with it." Vorts replied that he had still not moved. Adam looked at him. "Then get one, and make sure we have food for everybody. At least 6 months' food for everybody." Adam replied, then looked back at the screen and back at Vorts. "Oh, and thank you." Vorts was still standing there, and Adam tilted his head as he asked, "Yes? Anything I can help you with?" Vorts looked at him for a second, then shook his head as he replied, "No. You meant I can go." "Yes, I will see you later," Adam replied, and he watched as Vorts left. He was wondering if he insulted him in some way, and for a second he wondered where D01 was. "Computer locate D01. He didn't know why he had given the instruction, but D01 was just outside the bridge. He immediately stepped inside and, with a cold computer voice, reported in. It made Adam a little calmer, and he turned back to the screen. "Computer, show the current budget and compare the cost of today's spending to the average costs. Show on my screen," he asked, and he leaned towards the screen to check. Most were the same price, but he saw that Vorts seemed to not care so much about the costs, shopping with other people's money. Rox seemed to be much more frugal. It was clear that Rox would be doing the shopping for now. 3 hours later, Rox and York returned, and they reviewed everything. Only 1 cubic meter cargo hold was left, and it was divided among both ships. Adam was eager to get on the way. He paid for the hangar, and then they took off. He loved this part. He flew the ship out, and Rox's hauler followed perfectly. They quickly made it to the hyperplane and set the course and dropout point then. "Let's go," he said as he punched in the drive, and both ships vanished into the vastness of space. The autopilot immediately took off, and Adam checked the status of the ship's connection. Rox stood next to him and seemed impressed. "You know your way around the ship. That was some nice flying." "Well, I got a level 6 freight certificate. It took me a year and 600 hours of flying along with a 6-month course in everything they thought we could encounter out here," he replied as he got up and went to check on the navigation. "The ship is supposed to be flown by 3 with 2 engineers in cargo. The most effective crew is 10. That's why I'm so heavily reliant on the computer. Had it upgraded." "Your people don't sound like chaos, more like the Kunitos. Rules for everything," Roke replied, and Adam chuckled. "That's the insectoids, right? They sound like an autistic species for my kind. The certificate is just for my safety. Some never get them and stay off the radar while doing odd jobs. Anyway, everything looks secure and the alarm is set. It'll be a week before we get to my system, so I'm planning to study those books you got me," Adam replied. "I'll check up on the others," Rox replied as he headed out. Adam found out he enjoyed the company, mainly of Rox and York's. Hera was nice and grateful. Vorts was a little cold but never unfriendly. In fact, he was very professional. Hera had told him that Vorts just needed time. The little baby had become the focus of most of the small crew's attention, from his attempts to join his father in singing to crawling anywhere. In the end, Vorts placed a tracker on him just to be sure. Adam was ready when they dropped out of the hyperplane and set the course for the system. It would take 3 more days before they arrived. York's was mainly down in the workstation, programming some drones they had bought. They would be launched and study the system as the original scans had not been very thorough. When they entered the system on the 2nd day, York asked permission to launch the drones. Adam gave the clearance, and as they flew towards the planet, he launched them when they approached points of interest. The gas planets and their moons were all assigned a drone. Several drones were sent to scan the asteroid field, and the inner planet got 2. When they went into orbit over dirt, they launched the satellites. Adam checked up on the building's progress. The station was 30% finished, but with the droids and heavy machinery he had bought, they would cut down the factory times by at least 2, and it would have livable sections within a few days. He looked down on the planet and smiled. "Yes, this can work."